I, Nikhil Kumar, on behalf of Center for Indian and Global Studies, would like to thank you for joining us for today's international webinar. Center for Indian and Global Studies is a forum which aims to bring together research, academicians, and technical experts from various studies to initiate a dialogue on various socio-economic and political issues emerging at a local, national, and global level, and give insight on plausible solutions under the mentorship of Dr. Chhibber. Today, in association with our eminent speakers, we will try to bring forward discourse on SDG 11. Just to share the structure of the event, after the speakers have shared their views, we will have a question hour session. If you have any questions during the presentation, kindly type them in the YouTube stream chat box and we will ensure to bring them up during the webinar with your name. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our convener and moderator, Professor Dr. Bharti Chhibber. Dr. Chhibber has been teaching political science at University of Delhi, India for more than 16 years. She had been honored with many awards and fellowship. She did her BA honors and MA from Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi, and MPhil and PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University. India has published books and more than 100 research papers and articles in mainstream journals. To her credit, Dr. Chhibber's specialization include international relations, foreign policies, Indian politics, girl-child education, environmental issues, and gender discourse. Dr. Chhibber has worked extensively with non-governmental organizations to create awareness and empower people on environmental education and gender issues. Now I request Dr. Chhibber to moderate the session and also share her views on SDG 11 during the webinar.
Thank you, Nikhil, for that very generous introduction. Well, good morning and good evening. It's absolutely a pleasure to welcome you all to international webinar, where we have such esteemed speakers as Professor Anisur Rahman, Professor Dr. Tony Pereira, Dr. Gill, Ms. Mandeep, and of course, our partner for this webinar from Punjabi University, Professor Kaur. Well, it's absolutely a delight to have such esteemed speakers with us today who will be highlighting different aspects of SDG 11. And it's my privilege and my honor to introduce them. But before I do that, very quickly, a brief highlight about the subject. Well, as we have this webinar on SDG 11 on building eco-sustainable cities and communities, we thought of this webinar because it's a very timely and a very important subject. And I'm looking forward to a very engaging session. So I'm sure so does our participants and audience who are watching us live on YouTube. And since Sustainable Development Goal 11, which talks about sustainable cities and communities, is one of the 17 global goals that make up the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Why this goal is very important? Because as of now, about more than half of world's population live in cities, and it is expected that by 2050 it will be two-thirds of the world population, which will be about 6.5 billion people. They will be living in the urban areas, and this not only include people living in the urban areas, but we also see many urban slums. In addition to that, we have the rising population, migration, which has further resulted in these slums and also the mega cities. Well, just to share a couple of facts with you, according to United Nations Development Program, well, cities occupy just about 3% of Earth's land, but account for almost 60 to 80% of energy consumption and at least 70% of carbon emission. So this highlights that we do have many challenges. And rapid urbanization is actually putting a lot of pressure in terms of fresh water supply, sewage, public health. So, because of this congestion that we are facing and lack of basic services, there is also shortage of adequate housing and, of course, declining infrastructure. Uh, well, we should say that these cities are actually the engines of the urban development or sustainable development, or rather eco-sustainable development. And here we share culture, we share science, we share commerce, ideas, everything actually thrive in these cities. But being unplanned, all these cities without any formal boundaries, they can actually be detrimental to national development planning and the global goals of sustainable development. And as we all understand that with greenhouse gases, half of global urban population actually breathe air that is 2.5 times more polluted than standard demand acceptable by WHO. Well, we have the biggest example in Delhi, where most of us are right now with the kind of severe air pollution that we are facing. So, with this background, we actually need to make our cities more sustainable, which will be an integrated perspective, so that not only we create better employment, career, and business opportunities, but also safe and affordable housing, building resilient societies and economies. So, it involves investment in public transport, creating green public spaces, and improving urban planning and management in participatory and inclusive ways. These challenges, we need to overcome them because we need to manage the resources, focus on reduction of poverty, pollution, and ensure that basic facilities like basic services, housing, transportation are available. And also, we need to optimize energy efficiency by reducing energy consumption and also adopting green energy systems. Finally, talking about India, well, it's very heartening to know that the recent report by TERI and the other global organizations, they have 12 global organizations, they have come up with a report which highlight that India is the only G20 nation which is on course to meet targets which are laid down in 2050 Paris Agreement on climate change. And other nations, including US, China, and European Union, they are going to fall short of the target. So it's definitely very heartening to know that these global think tanks, the 14 global think tank, which came together, has produced this report. Well, the background could be because India has adopted renewable electricity on a large scale, including solar energy, and plants, including the recent one in Reba in Madhya Pradesh, actually highlight that. And we're working towards reducing carbon emissions in order to enable. But also, we need to work further in terms of electric transport and promote usage of this energy both at the household levels and at the level of the industries. Well, India is definitely working toward this, but of course, as I said earlier, it's more of an integrated approach, and the world has to come together because it's not a problem for one particular country. So, in order to have sustainable development, which can only be achieved through transforming the way we build our cities and manage our urban spaces. So, it has to be an integrated approach so that progress can be made not only on SDG 11, but all the other goals which are related in some way or the other. So, with this background, we will initiate our discussion, and I think all of you are waiting to listen to our esteemed speakers. So, I will now request our esteemed speaker. We'll begin with Professor Anisur Rahman. He has a very distinguished career, and Professor Rahman is currently Professor and Director UGC HRDC Jamia Millia Islamia, and he also holds his master's from AMU, and we share our alma mater in JNU, and he's also been my professor in lot many terms because I have learned a lot with him, worked a lot with him in terms of different seminars, conferences, and publications. And with Professor, before he joined Jamia Millia Islamia, he worked with the Institute of Applied Manpower Research Planning Commission, Government of India. And his areas of interest include South Asian migration, diaspora, Gulf, and he has published almost 15 books and over 100 research papers in reputed journals in India and abroad, and has contributed many chapters, scholarly chapters, which have been appreciated worldwide. Dr. Rahman has also presented almost 100 research papers in several conferences, seminars, and workshops in India and abroad, and has visited many countries, including US, UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, and Switzerland, and of course, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, to name a few. And he has also visited Paris, France, under Indo-French Social Scientist Exchange Program thrice for research in 2010, 2013, 2015. He has been invited and delivered more than 100 talks in different institutions of higher learning in India and abroad, and has been part of several committees, bodies, editorial boards. And he has such a long list of publications and talks and awards that if I'm going to read them, then it will take me almost a day. Just to highlight a couple of them further, he has also received the Associate Research Fellowship from DA program Paris, and also knows a couple of languages, including Hindi, English, Persian, and French. And some of his publications include Higher Education, Good Governance, Development Issues, Challenges, and Prospects, West Asian Transition, Human Rights and Social Security, and many other books and talks that he has delivered in University of Cambridge, University of Dijon, and many other universities. And he's also been part of many professional development programs. He has been coordinator of many MHRD programs for senior academicians, and also he's a nodal officer for MA program in Kashmir and South Asian Studies, which is jointly organized by Jamia Millia and University of Kashmir, Srinagar. And he's also editor and editorial board member of several journals in India and abroad. So, Professor Rahman, it's absolutely my privilege to welcome you and invite you to share your views on SDG 11. And Professor Rahman will be speaking on population and sustainable development, and will be sharing an Indian perspective. Over to you, Professor Rahman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bharti Chhibber, for using so many kind words to which I am sure that I don't deserve. But thank you once again. And my co-panelist, Professor Mini Gill, and many dear colleagues, friends who have joined this program being organized by the Delhi University College. So thank you once again. So the topic to which that has been assigned to me to speak on population and sustainable development. So I'm going to share my rambling thoughts in Indian context. So how population is important when the speed of population or growth of population becomes unmanageable, how it becomes liability for a country, as we all know. So at the global level, population is rising, and this is all due to this population. Sometimes we call it that we are not able to manage the population. We are not able to govern the population in a proper way. That is why there is a problem. So a lot of theories are there to explain about the reasons, causes of growth. Not only the growth, but there is one view that if we are able to manage the population, if we translate the population into the human resource, it becomes a big asset. So now the question arises how? So there is always mismatch between the growth of population and the resources which are available to a particular country within the boundary. In some country, we realize that there's a need of population growth. They have their own policy as how to increase the population. But on the other hand, the third world countries or developing countries, we face a serious problem of the overpopulation or the rapid growth of population. Still, that is going on. So that creates the crisis in terms of the health or water, or so many things are there. So here we are going to discuss about the sustainable development goals, which is very important, as previously it was Millennium Development Goals that has been now recaptured or recapitulated in different way. It was also for 15 years, and this is also going to exist for 15. So the whole idea of all these things is how to manage the population, how to have the balanced kind of development, means sustainable development. So it's very important. So we all are going to discuss. So just I have some slides. So in order to make my presentation effective, just I will show you some statistical facts and the figures so that we could do. So I have been asked to speak for 20-25 minutes. So definitely I am not going to take much of your time, because other speakers are also there. They will also have to speak. So I am going to speak. I will confine myself to only 20 minutes, so that I hope it is audible to you. Audible, and you all are seeing it.
Yes, Professor, it is visible. Yes, yes.
Okay, so population and sustainable, the Indian experiences, I will focus on it. As we all know that over population is a growing problem throughout the world. There's no doubt about that. The world population has reached more than 7 billion if we calculate right now. There will be, of course, be significant increase in the demand for food, water, energy in developing countries. So there's a rapid development of population. So this is one of the serious challenges are being faced by and large all developing countries like India. So we will discuss. India and many third world countries are now passing through a phase of population explosion. There's no doubt about that. It is being argued this situation has arisen because development in the country has failed to maintain pace with population growth. That is a serious challenge. So all these issues to which it is related. So if we already, I have told you that if we are able to manage our population, I think it will become the big assets, economic assets for the nation, and country will develop like anything. But the whole issue is how we are going to manage our population, how we are going to govern in a very productive manner so that it could become the assets. So as we all know that India is now is called as the demographic dividend country. Due to that, two-thirds of the population falls into this category of economically active, means 15 to 35. So it's a very important time for India to have the policy, F kind of policy, so that we could really translate this uh, uh, big chunk of the population, big chunk of the youths in the human resource. If we are able to do it, definitely it will become the very big, assets for the nation, and it could be worked as the engine of growth for our own nation. So now the question arises: if we are not able to manage, I am sure, and we all know that 20 or 25 years down the line, what will be the situation? That same chunk of the population will fall into the category of other, which we call it old age. So we would have another kind of population policy in order to address these very important challenges. So here is an opportunity to which we all call it the demographic dividend. India is a country of youth. So how we are going to have a very apt kind of policy so that we could do something for the betterment of the nation. So let us discuss some of the important theory of demographic transition. So as we all know, that every society, every economy and society, every country passes through a three stages where both birth rate and death rates are very high. Hence, the population remains more or less stable. So India has passed. India has crossed this limit. So here there's no any kind of population growth per se. still rising. Just I am giving you some sort of example that first billion means it was only 1 billion at the time of 1800 or 1804. In the say just after 123 years, it became double. And thereafter, just within 33 years, here 123, and thereafter within 33 years, it has become 3 billion. Three times it increased. And just after 14 years, just have a look how the time is lessening or declining, and the population is billion means 5 billion, and 11 years, 12. So the duration is just going down. At the same time, population is rising like anything. Of course, we know that population is a serious problem for only some countries, but majority of the South Asian countries, especially the developing countries, this is a very serious challenge. We are not able to manage our population in a very systematic manner, so it creates a lot of problems. See the situation within our own country. From rural area, people have been migrating to the urban. So there is a serious strain on the resources which are available in the cities. So how what we call it slums are increasing in many folds in all important or the mega cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, and many more cities. So it's a serious challenge. This is all due to the population. Just I am showing you some facts and the figures. See the situation, how population is rising. And of course, I have given the data from 2000. So it is on the basis of decadal or decennial population to which we gathered. So see all these important countries have been given. So only Nigeria is the only country in the world whose growth of population is more than India. Otherwise, just have a look on the other important countries. So just world average growth is 12.93, here 17.6%. So it's a very huge number. See the case of China, which is our competitor. So we compete and we make the comparison in terms of many things. So here just 5.43, here 17.64. It's a huge number. So of course, again, we can debate and discuss that how population growth in India is, and of course, that needs to be taken care of as how to manage our population, how to decrease the population, how we can work in this direction so that it could be managed properly for the sustainable development of our own nation. So just I am giving you some comparative picture which highlights the importance of this. See this case of this one, country-wise share in the world population. Here, 17.5. Okay, China, of course, right now, China is the first country. But in terms of the territory, China is bigger. And very soon we are going to replace, India is going to replace even in terms of the population. So not much difference is there, 17.5 and this one. So we are going to catch up, at least in terms of the population. So it's not a point of celebration or positive kind of things to my understanding. So here it's very important that we have to think on it as how to manage or govern our population. And of course, already I have told you that India is a country of 2/3 of the population falls into the economically active group. So how we can educate, how we can provide education, training, and skill so that very chunk of the population can be transformed into the human resource. If we are able to do it, definitely something would be better for the nation. So population growth in India, as we all know, India has more than 50% of the population below the age of 25. So I have told you, India is a demographic country. So only by saying that it's not only a point of celebration, it's a point of action. How we can have the apt kind of policy so that the 65%, so it's a huge number. It's a greater opportunity for India to tap it or to do something for this, for the sake of the nation. Uttar Pradesh is the most populous state in the country with almost 200, which is more than population of the Brazil. So many countries are existing within our own India as a whole. So it's very important that if we take it care of and if we have a very apt kind of policy, I think there's a need to focus on this very important point. So just 10 most populous, densely populated states of India. Just have a look on this. This one, most populous Bihar. You know the situation, what is. So it is the least developed state within our own country. So there's a lot of migration, which is still taking place from Bihar to different parts of India and even outside India. If you see the population, we often say that when we talk of the Gulf nations or the Gulf states, Kerala comes into the picture. But now Uttar Pradesh and Bihar have taken the lead and they have replaced southern Indian state in terms of the migration. And people have been migrating to many states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, even Haryana, Punjab from this state. So I think how we are going to manage with our own apt kind of policy, migration policy within the country. And we have witnessed the situation which arose at the time of just pandemic, when the pandemic came to India. So how situation became very vulnerable, how migrants started going back to their own state. So it was completely unmanageable. So now seeing the situation of that, we must think on it, and there would be need of research in these areas, how we can manage these kind of things so that migration could be not regulated in the proper way within our own different states. So there's a need to do something in the particular state so that the people could stay there. If we create the employment opportunity over there, I think this is the need of the time. I think sex-wise composition of population in India, so almost 6. Why I am saying that? It is also very important that why we should talk about this gender. Gender is also very important. At the global level, we all know that female constitutes 50%. So is the case with India. But the problem is that they are underrepresented. So we don't think about that unless until we have the inclusive growth policy or inclusive or education policy, or every policy should be inclusive so that they could be taken into the ground. If we are not doing as it has been left right now, I think 50% our human resources are wasted and they are not underutilized. So if we are really interested to have the sustainable development, we have to think in terms of the gender also, so that they could be taken into the account in our own policy. So the full potential of the human resources which are available to our country could be utilized for the development of gender. Our balanced gender sensitization, all things have become the need of our own nation. Unless until we address this issue, I think we are not going to do much more in this direction. So just I am saying, just have a look on this. I think 2040 and 972 at that time. Just have a look. So I think it is going down. But situation was pathetic in 1991. Again, anyhow, we have managed to have gone up to now 942. But at 1911, 972. So this is a very worry kind of trends. And if we see the scenario within the different states, take the example of Punjab and Haryana, situation is very vulnerable. And see the case of Kerala, I think there is a balance kind of a thing, more than male female are there. So here, as a whole, situation is not very encouraging, but we will have to work on this. How female feticide is taking place, how they are discriminated, we will have to address in true later and spirit. Then I think we could do something for sustainable development of our own nation, which is very important. So population census, I think this is important. Reasons for how? What are the reasons for high growth? I think this is very categorized, and we can understand under two very broad categories. I think economic factors and the social factors. Here it's very important. As we all know that we have our own, what we call it, we have our own policy of family planning for more than 70 years. More than 70 years, it has utterly failed. So what are the reasons? Why that policy has been completely failed? So we will have to see in the very objective manner. So predominance of agriculture, as we all know, slow urbanization process and predominance of villages. So these are the, and poverty is one of the very important. If you see why, I think these are the very important reasons for high birth rate. There's no doubt about that. So we will have to understand poverty is one of the very important reasons. If you go to rural area and poor families, if you make a survey, we'll get to know that they have the children, they procure more children so that they could become what we call the factors for earning the source of livelihood. So I think this kind of perception is there, and slow urbanization process and predominance of villages, of course it is there. And again we will have to see the wisdom of these kind of things, how it could be. But at the same time, already we know that if the rural people come to the city area, that is also very dangerous in the sense that it is nothing but because the resources are very limited. So what we could do it, I think these are the very important points. And what are the near universality of the marriage? See the situation means child marriage, all these things, lower age at the time of marriage, religious and the social superstition, joint family system. So social factors, economic factors combining together, if we see, these are the very important factors which give the kind of situation, create this kind of situation where high birth rate is possible, and that is still going on. So we will have to, I think, we will see to lack of education, unawareness about the family planning services. We don't know, means people hardly know about the relevance, importance of that field. See the situation, those who are highly educated, if you go to any university and the colleges or like these places, I think you will not find this kind of problem. I mean, professors or the highly educated person have not more than one or two children. So this is very important. So education is the panacea, let me tell you. If education comes into the society or it is come to any family, I think this sort of problem would be resolved to the large extent. Social and religious belief, I think it's especially in relation to all these uh, contraception, abortion, all these things, infant mortality rate. So these are the very important factors that must be taken. I'm not saying anything, but the whole idea is how we can sensitize our society, how we can make the awareness, how we can bring the awareness among the society so that they could realize the importance of the a small family. If they realize, right now they are thinking that they are the economic factors for their family, but how they are the burden, I think they have to make population growth, I think expansion of the industrial sector. If we really do it, and if we do it in the rural area and the places where, see the situation, in Bihar and the eastern Uttar Pradesh, hardly you'll find a single factory, single industrial sector. Only but sugar mill was once upon a time it was existing. If you go, all these have completely stopped. So where is the source of livelihood? If you see the situation of the agriculture, that has been completely left to the barren land they have become. So no, nothing. Of course, it's a alluvial soil. It's Ganges, Ganga goes through this, flows through this area, through this eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, but it has not been utilized. That has not been properly developed agriculture. So agriculture is finished, no any industry. So this problem will be there. So with the help of the research, we could know, and we need to do research in this area how this problem could be resolved. Creation of employment opportunity in the urban areas, not only in the urban area, even the rural areas is also very important. Equitable distribution of income and removal of poverty. I think this is increase education, employment, and wages for the women. Unless until we involve every gender in this, I think this problem is not going to resolve. I think this is increase the minimum age child labor, provide better old age security, raising the minimum age of marriage. These all are, I think this is not the new thing, but there is the need to do it vigorously in this direction so that something could be done. Improve the child health to reduce infant mortality. Implementation of family planning in later and spirit. I think it has to be realized by the society or the agencies to which implement. So as we all know, we are the best to formulate the policy, but so far the case of its implementation is concerned, we become very weaker and some problems crop up. So population policy in India, of course, we are having. So there's a need to work exactly in the direction how it could be made more pragmatic so that it could be implemented. And at the same time, there's unless until we create education, health, and all these things are not there, I think the people would not realize. So education is the, let me tell you, education is the panacea. So we need to work, we need to I think invest in education. See the situation so far, many countries in the world, they are investing at least 10%, 15% of their GDP. Here we are just confined ourselves to hardly 3 to 4%. For the last 50 or 40 years, we have been promising that at least 6% of our GDP would go for education. So far, it has not been. For the health, 1.5% or like this. So we will have to address the issue of the social sector, that is including education and health. Then I think we could do something for that. So here just I am giving you one population development in China and India, what kind of development is taking place in India and what we are witnessing in our own country. So we should learn something, the best practices wherever it is available, not only to China, but anywhere in the world. I think I am just concluding because I have taken much of your time. So India is still attaining its high rates of economic growth despite rising. Of course, we are saying, but there's the need to remove poverty, unemployment, and education and the health. Two sectors must be taken into account to reach the sustainable development goal and to implement the sustainable development goal in our own country. So we could do something wonders for our own nation. So now I thank you very much. I hope I have taken much of your time. So I think if anything is there, so I will respond to your questions and the queries. So once again, I'm very, very thankful to all of you for having listened to me so patiently. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Rahman, for a very comprehensive and such a well-structured presentation. I'm sure our audience are enlightened by your presentation about population, how it makes a deep impact on the policies of the government and also on the issues like migration, on sustainable development. And also, most important thing that you have highlighted is about the inclusive development, especially the declining child sex ratio. So that's very, very critical issue. And I'm sure there are many questions. I think two of the questions are there in the chat box, and we're also getting some live questions. So, Professor Rahman, will it be all right if we take the questions
Sure, sure. I'm
after the
ready.
next two speakers together? Okay, fine. So,
As as you feel
fine.
like, as you
So,
feel like.
Professor. Okay, then what we'll do, we'll take the questions right now, we have right now, and then probably after the two speakers, if there are further questions, then we'll come back to you. Will that be all right, Professor? Fine, that will be all
For
right.
me,
Okay.
everything is all right.
No, I know you have been very, very understanding and cooperating. I understand. So, Professor, we already have four questions. What if we look this problem as an opportunity? For instance, if we use population explosion as a human resource explosion. So what government can do to tackle this issue? I think what he's saying that probably that it's a positive thing that we have more population, so we have more human resource. So I think what's your take on that? Probably that's what he wants
Yeah.
to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, that's right. Population is so. Again, I am telling you that my perception about the population. If we are not able to manage the population, to which we are not managing, we are not able to manage. So it is going to become the liability for the nation. So yeah, due to variety of reasons, we are not able to manage our population, and we are celebrating and saying everywhere that we are celebrating the fact that India is a country of youths, and two-thirds of the population falls into that category. But the whole idea, if we are not able to manage, if we don't have the apt kind of policy, 20 or 30 years down the line, this celebration will get over. So here is a point to just tap it. If we are really, I think two theories are there. Population can never be should never be considered as the liability, and here we can manage our population. If we are able to translate that population in the human resource, it will become the big nation for anything. But the question is that we are not able. So if we become able, I think it will be a big asset for the nation. There's no doubt about that. So we need this kind of political willpower. We need this kind of priority to which we are not having. So our purpose is to sensitize the state agency or to the concerned body or to the policy maker how as an academician we can do. We can only do with the help of our objective research, and we can recommend the same to the policy makers so that the apt kind of policy could be formulated. As we have a very good kind of, let me tell you, despite all limitation, we have very good kind of education policy, national education policy. If it is implemented, if it is going to implemented in toto or later in a spirit, I think lot of change will be expected, positive change will be expected. So this is my take, and this is my, I think, response to this question.
Thank you, Professor. I think we have three more questions as of now. The second question is that we have seen that growing population leads to increasing inequality. So, inequality is
family planning that has failed, that has not brought any kind of this. How you could reduce your population? Ours is a country, our is system, which is we call a democratic form of governance. We cannot force any kind, but we can create consensus decision of this nation. And we can create consensus decision of this nation. And again, for the family. So this kind of situation is there. So we will have to create this kind of awareness, right kind of awareness. I think then we will be only by creating or enacting the policy or the act is not going to bring any kind of change. Let me tell you, see this in 1961 we have our own anti-dowry act. Do you know? I think a dowry system is increasing. It has increases phenomenally. So unless until society should be made realize its benefit and its deficit, nothing is going to happen. So the whole idea, only with the help of education, I think we can create a conscious citizen of this nation. And conscious citizen can be the assets for the nation.
Right. And sir, we have two questions. I'll read both the questions together, which we have received from our audience. One question is, sir, you mentioned about population explosion. So, do you believe that one child policy in India will succeed? And if we can give any kind of incentives to those parents who have only one child, will that help? And another related question is that when you mentioned about child sex ratio is declining, especially the in terms of girl child vis-a-vis boys. So the question is that we already have schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So what other schemes should be there in order to encourage that the level comes at par, boys and girls level? So these are the two questions.
Again, these kind of I think only acts and the policy are not going to work. The whole idea, again, I will repeat that. I think both should be given. Girl and the boy, both children should be given equal opportunity. How many of the professor, you know, that they discriminate between the girl child and the male child? They don't discriminate. The whole idea is that it would take time, and again it could be only possible with the help of bringing consciousness. I think one child is not going to work in our own country. Even it had not worked in China. It had its own other kind of implication for the society. So what happened in that society? If the female child was there, so it increased the female feticide in that country. Same thing will happen in our country. I think, let me tell you, I think I have my own experience. Either you study the professors of Jamia, Millia, Islamia, or JNU, or DU, or for that matter, any university. So it has nothing to do with any caste community or like that. The whole idea is, if you are educated, you understand that I can afford only two child. I can afford only one child. I think it will work. It will work, and the whole idea, provide education. Provide education to each and every person. I think Sab Shiksha Abhiyan, I think it's good. Of course, the potential, it should have been there. It was not like this even then. Let us say, so Rashtriya Uchchata Shiksha Abhiyan, so national higher education policy. So this kind of movement, movement should be there, so that we do. But again, my urge to all of us, that let us spend a substantial amount, significant amount of our GDP for education. So if the state starts shirking its responsibility and only it is left to the private sector, I think it is again going to create the havoc for our own society. So there should be public private partnership, and government should not shirk its responsibility. Government should shoulder its responsibility with the private sector, the other philanthropists, and give the importance, much importance to social sectors, especially education and health. I think these are the two what we call the panacea for the society. Otherwise, one child norm, two child norm, or like that. Already we have seen the fate of the family planning. So we should learn something, and the failure of the failure of the policy to which we have had. So here, I think again, education or like this kind of things, awareness would bring some kind of tangible change in our own society. And let us at every level let us work like of course population should be regulated to the extent possible. At the same time, the population to which we all are having, so we are saying that India is a demographic dividend country. India is a country of youths. So we should not wait for any moment. We should grab this opportunity because the whole world is globalized and very competitive. So in this competitive world, how we are going to work? So take the example of diaspora. So around 32 million Indian diaspora are all over more than 125 countries. They are working, and we have received latest data. We have received the maximum amount of remittance, $81 billion, due to these migrants or due to this diaspora. So India has still maintaining for the last 10 years to get maximum remittance. So why I'm saying, so China has been replaced by India, at least in terms of the receipt of the remittance, and we realize and we know the importance of remittances, how it is beneficial for the country in order to eradicate poverty, unemployment, to bring development at the micro level, at the macro level. I think why I have highlighted this point. So India is a country of surplus labor. We are considered to be the country of human resource, abundance of human resource. So let us, with the help of the ministry, has been created like a skill development ministry. So like that, we should realize since we have our own positive aspect. So let us tap that our strength. Let us utilize our strength and work on the what we call negative points or the weaker points, so that we could do something for that.
Thank you, Professor Rahman. As always, it's a pleasure hearing you. And I think you emphasized on social sector and especially education. All of us agree with that, that we need to actually ensure that literacy spreads and everyone is educated in the country. Thank you once again for
Thank you.
highlighting these
Thank you
important
so
points.
much indeed.
So,
Ma'am, it's my pleasure.
thank you, Professor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And now, thank you. And sir, now we have two more important speakers today. We are still waiting for our US speaker. Hopefully, he'll be able to join. He just emailed me that due to some problem, he'll be joining us shortly. And I also understand, Professor Rahman, that you have a prior commitment. So, in case there is an urgency to leave, do let me know, sir. I'll be thanking you, and then it will, because it's our pleasure to join you. And if you can stay back for some time, again, it will be our pleasure, sir. So we have Dr. H.S. Gill, another renowned speaker with us, and we also have Ms. Mandeep Kaur. So we'll be very happy to hear those their views also. And my co-convenor from the Punjabi University, Dr. Ravneet Kaur, she'll be introducing them. Just to share a few words about Dr. Ravneet Kaur. Well, Dr. Ravneet Kaur, she's a professor of public administration in Department of Distant Education, Punjabi University, Patiala, and she's been teaching for quite many years, of almost 24 years of experience. She has been guiding PhD and MPhil research scholars and has held various administrative positions in the university, like NSS Office in Charge, Girls Wing, Deputy PRO, Director International Students, and she has also visited many universities in China, Australia, Singapore, and is also a member of many national and international associations. So over to you, Dr. Ravneet Kaur. Please introduce our two other esteemed panelists, Dr. H.S. Gill and Ms. Mandeep Kaur.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor Bharti. Good noon to everyone. So far we had listened to Professor Anisur Rahman, a renowned academician. He has touched upon a very sensitive and critical aspect, that is burgeoning population, which I think is the root cause of most of the problems being faced by majority of the developing countries. So, of course, we have two very prominent speakers, but I will just like to introduce few words. So for sustainability, like we have chosen the SDG 11, but we all are discussing sustainability. But I think for that, what we need is one single umbrella legal framework, particularly in developing countries, because Sir has touched upon this population explosion and through education it can be brought. But I suppose even on the other fronts, we have to work a lot. To start with, because my research area is also urban housing and development, what I had found is still surprising, or should we say, a bit shocking, that a country doesn't have a national urban development policy. Even in 21st century, in 2019 only, for the first time, a draft was prepared for national urban policy framework. And still suggestions have been sought, but nothing concrete has come out of it. So, of course, I would like to give you just a glimpse of what type of suggestions were solicited. Like they wanted something on cities as cluster of human capital, or cities required sense of place, or not static master plans but evolving ecosystems built for density. I mean, of course, like of our forthcoming, if it ever comes, National Urban Development Policy Framework, and of course, public places that should encourage social interactions, multi-modal public transport backbone, environmental sustainability, financially self-reliant cities, and of course, cities as engines of regional growth. But here I will like to delve upon two or three critical issues that still are, they need to be focused upon if we really want sustainability in the truest sense. Like under environmental sustainability, right now in our country, what is happening? We have adopted an approach of change of land use. So change of land use, this is being allowed at a high rate for hefty amount, but many times ignoring the environmental implications of the project allowed to be run on such a piece of land. So virtually what is happening is, in the name of urbanization, our areas are fast becoming concrete jungles, and we are of course losing our green belts that are very, very necessary for the sustainable growth of any country, any region. So similarly, we are talking about financially self-reliant cities. But again, poor strata in the city area, slum areas, these all are stark evidences that negate the very guideline of making cities self-reliant. We can see all this in Mumbai, Dharvi, or even in Delhi, all those sheltered areas on the old Delhi side. So nothing concrete has been done so far to tackle these issues. Similarly, one another aspect of forthcoming urban development policy, that is cities as engine of regional growth. But what is happening? What we can see is congested cities, scarcely populated rural areas. So there is a clear imbalance. Though, of course, central government missions and schemes, they are aiming at curtailing and controlling unnecessary migration from rural to urban areas. But these schemes have so far not been very, very successful. So I can simply say that so far in developing countries like India, fragmented approach has been adopted, be it between the level of the governance, that is central, state, and local level, or be it with regard to legislations and legal framework and its implementation. Like we have housing and habitat policy, We have slum dwellers policy. We have policy dealing with street vendors. We have policies housing for poor. We have scavengers rehabilitation policy. But all this shows that though there is plethora of laws to deal with varied segments of urbanization, but no single umbrella legal framework which can give due consideration to all these aspects simultaneously and in a well coordinated manner. Thus, the need of the hour is to evolve a comprehensive, cohesive policy framework for sustainable urban development, aiming at well planned, regulated development. So, with a few words of mine, introductory words, I should say, I'm hopeful that our following speakers, being thorough professionals, are going to present some concrete suggestions in this slide so as to realize the sustainable goal in a feasible manner. Thus, to bring a balance and make our webinar adopt a practical approach, we have two speakers who have a long stint with the areas that are being discussed upon in this very webinar. So, introducing our first speaker on the practical side, Dr. H.S. Gill had been former Executive Director of Human Settlement Management Institute, New Delhi. He has earned doctorate in economics from JNU, New Delhi. Being a diversified professional, he had contributed in the areas of urban and rural housing, water and sanitation, forestry, employment-based programs, town and country planning. He has made his mark in academics as well, as he has co-authored and edited books, wrote articles for journals, and 16 policy project reports. He has also prepared India Country Report for UN Habitat 3. So Dr. H.S. Gill will deliberate upon smart cities projects as part of urbanization in India. So now over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody who are available and as a faculty and the person who are attending this webinar all around. We is a process of transformation of the society, and also we term it as a engines of economic growth. But our engines are becoming obsolete, old, and it requires a lot of tuning, lot of inputs, lot of infrastructure, lot of investment. And the government of India around 5 years ago went for a plan to have smart cities, as the cities are really smart in the Western country, North America. We should also have a smart cities on those lines. And smart at the same time, sustainable cities. So we came up with a plan to have a financial support to 100 cities all over the country. Depending upon different parameters, we were able to choose 100 cities. I think we have chosen 2-3 more now. So it's 100 plus smart cities where high dose of investment is being injected to those areas. And as we have SDG 11, we always talk of sustainability. So sustainability is the focus. And I would talk about a couple of issues with the requirement of introduction of technology in the development of the cities. But before I say something about the investment and technology, I would say that we need to have a very important role of public-private partnership. Our administration alone cannot do anything. Our population alone cannot do anything. We have to go very strongly, joining hands together and work in coordinated manner. We have to inculcate the value system. We have to motivate our population. We have to educate them. We have to sensitize them. We have to bring change in the attitude, investment, and all around. So therefore, first of all, I would like to talk about the water supply as one component of urban development. Water supply in a traditional way, what we have been doing to link the households with the water supply in an organized manner. But we never thought about the wastewater. We never thought about the water harvesting. And good number of cities in our country are suffering from scarcity of water shortages. So therefore, there is a very important role of water technologies. The wastewater has to be treated. There is one separate ministry which is taking care of all the water bodies. It is Ganga, Yamuna, other rivers, where the wastewater is going out, flowing without any treatment, and trying to destroy the entire water system. So we have now put up a focus on wastewater treatment and really release the water to different water bodies after 100% water treatment. If we do not treat the water, it adversely affects the composition of the entire water system. Therefore, that we have done. And that change is meant for 100 cities. Of course, investment is needed for all settlement level. At rural settlement level, the government has made a ministry, water resource ministry, and water is to be supplied to all the human settlements in the villages, in the countryside over a period of time, over a period of 5 years. So I'm not saying only 100 cities. There is a focus of water supply. There is a focus on sanitation, that 100% population should be covered with the sanitation. I think we have already declared defecation-free areas, but if there is any gap of policy level gap is not there, if there is any level of implementation gap, and that should be addressed. And that is being addressed at the central level, state government level, local government body level. All level efforts are being made. Population sensitization for utilization of the sanitation is also there. As far as yellow water is concerned, we have come up with the technologies. We can treat yellow water and the water can be used. Same water can be used even for drinking purpose. There are inhibitions, there are hesitations. What we say that whatever the amount of water is available, 5 times is a very big statement, but it is practically possible. There is being set up in other cities where the water is yellow water is treated, and if we have an inhibition of drinking it, at least we can use it for non-drinking purposes at the household level by laying double piping system in the housing areas. So I think we need to focus on technology, the available technology. These are indigenous technologies which India has developed itself and are brought into implementation at the settlement level. We have a city waste, municipal waste, and waste is of two types. One, wet waste, other is dry waste. For wet waste, that is biodegradable waste, we have come up with the technologies which process the waste, uh, 2-3 plants have already come up. One is working in Karnal, another is working in Delhi, third is working in Maharashtra, and there are negotiations going on where to put up such kind of plants. I believe it is needed all over the country. The size of those plants can vary from small to big one, and I think the implementation is very essentially required. The wet waste is converted into three components. The first component is we produce CNG gas or the biogas or the methane gas. The second component is CO2. We do not release CO2 in the environment. We capture the CO2 in a very scientific manner and use it for high value creation purpose. The third component is compost manure. It has again two components. One is dry manure, another is wet manure, liquid manure. So the CO2 we are able to use for indoor farming. And the calculation we have done that if we have a 1 hectare of land along with 100 ton of solid waste management plant, we are able to generate as much as returns as high as 50% on investment. ROI on investment is more than 50%. Whereas in the industrial sector, ROI is around 10%. So this is the sector which we have made it as a very attractive sector, attractive for the investors. So we have developed that technology. The technology is not in the lab scale. It is now operating at the commercial scale. We need to enforce that technology at each and every city level. And government is providing investment by part of it by central government, part of it by the state government, and part of it by the local government. And if again there is a shortfall, they can take money from the financial institutions and come up with the implementation of the project and take care of the waste gases which we release in the environment. No CO2, no methane gas, which is very dangerous. And as SDG goal 11, I think we need to control it very appropriately. And the manure, dry manure, the liquid manure, we can utilize for organic farming, which is the requirement of the coming days. So waste to elimination is our call, and we are trying to implementation effectively. And I hope we would be. It is obviously a time-driven process, and we can do it very comfortably if we are able to sensitize local population, local governments, state governments, and national governments. I would like to come up to the issue of transportation in the cities. That is another component of the smart cities. The internal combustion engine, which releases high amount of gases, which are not good for the health of the citizens, I think that is to be replaced. We have come up with the Euro 6 standard vehicles as well as the fuel, and that has attempted some degree of a reduction in the gases in the environment. As the number of vehicles which move to new vehicles come to the market and fuel is being used, impact is definitely there. But I think we need not to end the story here. There is a big race going on between battery and hydrogen. And in coming 10 years, I think both are going to win the race. The UK government has declared that by 2030, Thereafter, there would be no new registration of any vehicle which utilizes internal combustion engine. European countries, North America has made this target as 2035. And I think with the development of science and technology and commercialization of this technology in this area, we are going to win the race. And India would also be able to follow the similar guidelines. Cities, we are trying to adopt hydrogen gas. Leh is one of the city which has been chosen first as an experimental city where the buses will run on hydrogen. Delhi CNG and hydrogen combination buses have been tried. Battery buses at skeleton scale, Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi level, all are being tried, and other cities are also trying. We are trying to build like metros which are driven by electricity, not by the oil sector. So I think we are going to make that kind of sensitization, expansion of roads, and investment in the cities. We are utilizing the model TDR, Transfer Development Rights. It is very successful in Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Bangalore, all the big cities. This model is tried, and land is assembled through the process of TDR. TDR is very transferable development rights is one of the very important instruments. It is a participation of government and the private sector where extra FAR is provided to the private sector, and those who are the affected party, they are given compensation more than double the size of the compensation of the actual market value. So as and when there is a call for land assembly, I think more number than the desired or required number people are assembling and participating in the process, and the widening up of the roads, building up of the new infrastructure is taking place. I think in this pandemic has made us to learn about the housing. There is a 1/3 of the section of the population, as far as the housing surveys census is concerned, they are living in a single room accommodation. And as there is a requirement of isolation of the patient of coronavirus, it has not happened, and the entire families have been affected. Therefore, the government, I think, perceived this kind of approach and came up with the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, both in rural area as well as in the urban areas. In urban areas, we have been successfully able to sanction 12 million houses. Our shortage, which came from the statistics provided by the state governments and the union territories, was 12 million. And the entire housing shortage, which is perceived for the poor people, has already been sanctioned. Few houses, I think 2 million houses have already been provided to the poor people to the desirable locations, and the rest of the houses are under construction in several stages. And I think the target is to complete that shortage. But as Professor Rahman indicated, that we are living in a population dynamic framework. Therefore, the new demand would be coming, the family sizes would be expanding, there would be the new nuclear families coming up in the coming days to take care of the dynamics of the population. I think this chapter will stay open, and as and when there is a new requirement, the interest of the poor would be taken care of. Similarly, in rural areas, the poor have been identified, and 1.5 lakh rupees is provided as 100% grant to the poor people to build their own house with their own efforts. And 30 square meter house with toilet, with bath, and 2 rooms is being provided. So I think it takes care of the congestion. It takes care of the isolation of the family member who get infected because of virus, bacteria, and other kind of disease. I think yes, in terms of planning, we have failed miserably. Our planner never thought about making provision of spaces for the poor people. They have gone with the concept of affordability, and that gap we have realized. And I think now the government is suggesting that there should be around 20% reservation of land, 15 to 20% of reservation of land for the poor people. If you look into the National Housing and Habitat Policy document, it is clearly mentioned that land for the new pockets must be reserved for housing the poor people, so that we are able to address the concern of the poor people in different level of settlements. We need to isolate them from their livelihood and their housing requirements. Housing requirements and livelihood must be integrated in the entire framework. In terms of energy, cities consume about 30% of the total energy as a household sector. I think there is a focus by Ministry of Non-Conventional Resources of Energy. As a country level, we have taken a decision that there should be a concept of smart meter. What is smart meter? We put up solar PV on the rooftop, say 1 unit, 1 kilowatt, and 1 kilowatt would be able to generate 4 units a day. If we are during daytime, we are not at home, the smart meter means the smart meter will start moving in a reverse direction, anti-clockwise. Means it will credit 4 units in your account. If you are at home, you have the first priority, utilize the solar PV power generation. And when the sun is not there, you are taking electricity from the grid. So concept of smart grid, concept of the smart meter has been introduced, and most of the states are following it. Now there is a requirement and there is a sensitization among the household. I think maybe after 1,000 household, maybe around 10 households have installed such kind of instruments. We need to generate power. We are the sun country, where the sun is available for more than 300 days a year. So 1 kilowatt unit would be able to produce as much as 1,200 units a year. It is very, very substantial. And most of the households, what they consume, it is against the same level. It's as high as 50% of the consumption of the household. It's a very significant. Now, talking about new appliances. For instance, the clandestine bulb, George Edison's time bulb, 100-watt bulb produces 700 lumens. But now LED bulb, 7-watt bulb produces 700 lumens. Same amount of electricity. So if we replace old bulb with a LED bulb, we save substantial amount of electricity. So there has been campaign in the country where the government has distributed bulbs, such bulbs, free of cost. 2 bulbs per family. You give your Aadhaar number, come to distribution centers and take 2 bulbs. It's experimental. Now the bulbs are available at a very cheaper, less expensive rate in the market. So there is a possibility to adopting it. Similarly, BLDC fan is available. Our old fan consumes 65 to 90 watt electricity. The new BLDC fan consumes 12 watt to 32 watt electricity. If you rotate at speed of 1, 12 watt, speed of 2, 16 watt, and similarly wattage of consumption go up as you speed up the fan. Similarly, we have air conditioners. A normal 1.5 ton unit of air conditioner, window unit, consume 2 units per hour. But if you put up inverter AC, it ranges from 350 watt to 800 watts. So power consumption is very small. So I think we need to sensitize the households to go for adoption of new efficient electrical appliances. The state electricity boards like Delhi, they have started providing such fans. At market value, the BLDC fan would be available for 3,500. But if you buy from the electricity supply companies, it will be available to you for 1,200 rupees. So reasonably less expensive, energy efficient. And if we do this kind of approach, we produce energy, we save energy, we save carbon dioxide as a major source of energy production in the country. Coming from major source of CO2 production, release of obnoxious gases which are not good for the health of the human well-being. Therefore, I think there is a need to have a dynamic framework in the human settlements and try to adopt the technologies, more appropriate technologies. I'm not saying that technology is the ultimate, but we cannot standardize at the entire country level as we have a different geographical areas. Different level of requirements may be differently available in different states. So we can do it. We can produce water from the air. Condensation process is there. One plant is working in Goa, in one of the star hotel. They are producing out of it as a mineral water. And the rate at which they are producing is 3 rupees per liter. They are bottling it and serving same bottle for 20 rupees per liter. Huge profits. Similarly, railway has put up such unit in Warangal, I believe. So they are producing water from the air and supplying to the passenger trains in different bogies. People are traveling, consuming such water. So I think there is possibilities. We are in the age of technologies. There is a need to adopt those technologies, but government alone cannot do. There is a strongly requirement of public-private partnership, and sometimes the public has to be in the lead role. Sometimes the governments have to be in the lead role. But the combination is really deadly, and I think we need to work on this combination. Bring in investment from the government sector, investment from the state government, national government, local government, investment from the private sector, investment from the banking and the financial institutions, and really bring change in the settlements. We also ignore our water bodies and green areas in the urban areas. Uh, for example, the city of Bangalore, now earlier Bangalore, now Bengaluru, used to have more than 1,000 water bodies. What the Bangalore Development Authority has done, they have filled up water bodies with the soil and built up the houses there. So, in the name of lake, there is only Alsur Lake. There's no other lake in the city. And this has really affected the entire ecosystem. The plants, 100 years, 200 years old plants have started drying up because the water table has gone down substantially, despite the city is having a high rainfall area zone. So I think sometimes the bad policy brings very bad results. We need to look into every policy, evaluate every approach, and look into plus and minus of every approach, and then implement uniform some policy all over the country. I believe personally is not implementable, and we need to look into greenery. We need to look into the water bodies, maintain those water bodies, maintain the ecosystems of cities, and live healthy and happy life. So I would like to end here. If there are questions, I would like to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill, for a very, very interesting presentation. And I think you highlighted many of the positive initiatives, both at the policy matter as well as transformation at the ground level that have been undertaken in India. And I remember, in addition to the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, we also have Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation in order to ensure that our urban spaces improve. And the various aspects that you highlighted, whether sanitation, what clean water supply, transportation, the clean energy based transportation, and the infrastructure. I think these are some of the initiatives which, in addition to, of course, the solar energy that we have taken. And I'm sure that India is moving quite in the positive direction. Of course, there are certain lacunas, certain problems which need to be taken care of, but hopefully we will be able to overcome these problems in the near future. So with that, a lot of positivity that, or the positive input that you have shared with us, we have 2 or 3 questions. I'll be quickly asking those questions. One question is in the chat box, Dr. Gill. It is, how can cities prepare and eventually become more resilient to climate change? What policies should be adopted in order to move towards sustainable smart city vision?
Climate change is not a issue which comes in the isolation. It's a really integrated issue. For instance, if farmers do not burn stubble, Haryana, Punjab, and Western Uttar Pradesh, Delhi is not affected.
Mm-hmm.
So ICAR, USA Institute has come up with a solution that cost you about 50 rupees per acre. And if you spray that spray in the farm, we are able to convert the stubble into manure, and it takes just 3 weeks. So at the same time, the requirement of a fertilizer is reduced as much as 25%. So one input of the farmer has reduced, fertility of the farm has increased, there is no smoke, and it is not the smoke which is going to Delhi alone. It is smoke in Punjab, every village, every household, every urban area, every rural area. So sustainability is a broader concept. environmental sustainability, I think, is a responsibility of everyone. If you stay in Mysuru, since it is a area which is dust-free area, you need not to, you know, do the dusting in your household every day. If you live in Delhi, it is a full of dust. So I think, depending upon the area we live, sustainability has its own relevance, and sustainability comes into picture in a different format. So, for instance, Israel has done agriculture in a condition like Rajasthan. We have started doing one form. We have brought technology from the Israel, and I think Bikaner is the area where the 500 hectare land has been utilized and cultivation is going on. So I think adoption of technology and a greening, and in Rajasthan greenery, that too without water, is possible. Similarly, if the farmers think of changing to agricultural practices, it is possible. We need not to burn the stubble. And if we don't burn the stubble, we save a lot of gases, lot of smoke, lot of disease which come. For instance, asthma patients are extremely affected during these days. For instance, Sonia Gandhi has been told to move out of the city. She has landed yesterday in Goa. It's a big news in the newspaper, today's newspaper. TV has done a lot of coverage. So I think sustainability has a relative concept and it comes in different form. Environmental sustainability particularly. So every city has to look into its own solution. Thank you.
Yeah, very true, Dr. Gill. As Professor Rahman also highlighted, that we have certain drawbacks which we, of course, need to cover up. Dr. Gill, as I have been working, and so does Professor Rahman, on West Asia, and you just mentioned about Israel. So, of course, you were talking about drip agriculture. That is something that they have actually, they have actually championed, and we are also learning, or rather collaborating with them in terms of that. So, Professor, I have two questions which I'll combine because they both are related to waste management. That you mentioned about three components, and you mentioned about CO2, which is not released in air, but you also mentioned about methane. So, one of our participants is asking that methane is also one of the greenhouse gases. So, is that released in air as part of the waste treatment? That is one. And the related question is from the other participant. She says that you mentioned that about dry waste and the wet waste, but there's a third waste, she says, which is hazardous waste. So what about the treatment of this waste? So these are two questions on waste management.
Let me say there are obviously three types of waste. I did not deliberately took part in the two other waste. The wet waste, which we have already installed a plant, 10-ton plant, which is working from the last 3 years in the city of Karnal. It is a constituency of the Chief Minister of Haryana. He's the second time, and he wanted that the plant should be installed in his constituency in his town. That we did. And we capture these two gases in a scientific manner. And methane, which we capture, is nothing. When we make it purification, it becomes CNG, compressed natural gas. And we are utilizing it for in an engine to produce electricity. And we supply electricity in some of the areas of the Karnal city. And now I think the new plant, the negotiation is going on for 100 ton plant in the city of Karnal. As far as CO2 is concerned, what we do is we do the indoor farming, and CO2 is the essential requirement of the plants. They need to grow. They grow very fast. We use water it has a two component of hydrogen and one component of oxygen. So hydrogen is also required for the growth of the plants. And third is the light, sunlight or artificial light. In the indoor farming, we give a combination of LED lights, which is blue color and red color, and we create the sun-like environment. It grows day and night, and there is a algae which grow every. We have to harvest algae every 4 hours, 6 crops in a day. And do you know, from algae we are able to produce vegetarian protein.
Mhm.
A 100 ton plant would be good enough for the city like Patiala.
Mhm.
Entire population would be producing 100 tons wet waste per day. So plant will be consuming the entire waste. We will be producing uh, 5 tons CNG or the methane gas, which we are capturing in a scientific manner, 5 tons CO2, and 15 tons dry manure and 15-ton liquid manure. This is the composition which we get from the plant. And everything is utilized. Every input is input for other products. And when we sell this kind of algae in the market, which is protein driven algae, 100-ton plant, which we do the cultivation of 1 hectare indoor farming, give us $1 lakh per day. $1 lakh per day is the income. 100 rupees, $100 per kilo is a protein which is sold in the international market, and we produce 1 ton. 100 into 1,000 is $1 lakh. This is the income from that plant. We are working on it. We are going to set up this kind of plant. So I think we want to demonstrate to the investors that this is the area which is one of the best area. And if the entire global waste is taken care of, we take care of the partly methane, we take care of the partly CO2. At the same time, entire population per day we can able to give 3 grams of vegetable protein, which essentially normal human being requires 50 grams per day for its sustainability. So 3 grams we are providing from this waste. At the same time, the returns of investment are very high. It's a win-win situation. This is the first part of the picture. The second part is a dry waste. Dry waste is Maharashtra. There is a plasma torch technology which has been received from Canada, and entire state's dry waste is collected near Pune, around 40 kilometers from Pune, and 20 megawatt electricity unit is working. It is working from the last, I think, 7-8 years. We organize we organize international training program and take the participants to that place, and we show them that this kind of technology is possible. And when the plasma torch is introduced, we burn the dry waste and different kind of waste at a very high temperature, as high as more than 1,000 degrees. In that temperature, no gases are released. It is in the controlled environment, and very small amount of ash is coming out of it, which is captured, and we produce the bricks out of the ash. Nothing left on the site. It's a waste to elimination. That is the approach. As far as the hazardous waste are concerned, I'm not really good expert in that area, so I will not attempt to that. I don't want to take a risk. Thank you.
No problem, Dr. Gill. And we have one last question, and that is from me because I've been working for many years on solar energy. Well, I have seen there were two problems, Dr. Gill. One was the lack of awareness in people initially about the solar energy, because we have seen that schools and even universities and the colleges have adopted that, and of course all the ministerial buildings, but household, still there was a slow acceptance in terms of solar energy. And second was the initial cost or investment. Of course later we have many advantages, but initially. But now that we have seen that the cost of solar energy has come down, and I remember the latest report of International Energy Agency actually says that solar energy is the cheapest source of energy now. So, when you talk about transportation, especially in terms of electrical transportation or the electrical vehicles, or electric vehicles rather. So, do you also, because again, you're facing the same problem, especially in terms of private cars or otherwise. So, do you also see, because one, of course, we need to make people aware of that. And the second, do you see the cost coming down and the more subsidies in order to promote so that people move on to clear transportation?
Uh, Cost, of course, is important issue, no doubt. But cost is there when we use the battery. When we don't use the battery, the cost is negligible. Uh, 3 years ago, I installed this solar system in my office, and it was 80,000 per kilowatt. And now the cost has come down to 30,000 per kilowatt. So in three and a half years, the cost has come down many times. So it is really very competitive. And the recovery of investment takes place in 4 to 5 years. And the life of solar panel, minimum life, guaranteed life is 25 years. But it runs up to 40 years in most of the cases. So if you recover your investment in 5 years, the rest of the period is your plus period. I think there cannot be a better option. As far as the vehicle are concerned, there is one boy from Karnataka who has converted his auto rickshaw into, I think, Karnataka or Kerala, if I'm not mistaken, into solar panels. Put up on the roof, put up on both the sides and back side. Whichever the side he's moving, he should get the energy. And he has taken journey with all visa from so many countries. His destination is to reach to London without having external energy. So it is running on solar. He's traveling from one place to another place. So I think one of the success stories. But if you take on buses, auto rickshaws, others, of course they need external charging. And the battery sector is going to grow very fast. The battery which used to charge in 8 hours, now it is being charged in less than an hour. And maybe after 2 3 years, which battery is being charged in 1 hour will be taking 8 to 10 minutes. So it is something similar. You are stopping on the petrol pump and getting the petrol. Similar thing, similar time would be there. If you are hydrogen user, it would be same time what you spend on the petrol pump. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, your the tank would be full, and you move 300 to 500 kilometers with single charge. Uh, there is the innovation which you has done in terms of battery, million mile battery. Million mile battery get charged in 5 minutes, and one end to another end of USA can be traveled with single charge. What else you look forward? And I think those batteries would be released in the market in 2 3 years. Work is going on. Testing stage is being done. It's not in the lab, it is at the commercial scale. So I think adoption of technology would be important. I still would like to go for it. But we, as a conservative country, we are slow. And when we are slow in adoption of technologies, cost is in our favor. Those who go at the initial stage, the cost is very high. As I said, 3 years ago, 80,000 per kilowatt. Now it is 30,000 per kilowatt. So in 3 years, 5 years down the line, the cost differential would be there. So then air batteries are there, a lot of air batteries, aluminum air, sodium air, so many components are there. So let us see who wins the race. But this is going to be a winner's side, and we would be the beneficial. I think I'm very hopeful to see most of the changes happening in my life right along. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill, for ending it on a very optimistic note and a very engaging session. So, again, Dr. Ravneet, please introduce Miss Mandeep Kaur, our final speaker for the day.
Right. Thank you, sir, for sharing valuable data with regard to various components of smart cities project undertaken, particularly focusing on better water supply and management, improvement in transportation modes, and adopting fuel efficient technologies, etc. And also, sir, for a word of caution while framing and implementing such policies. So thank you, sir. And now we have another speaker who is also a professional, Madam Mandeep Kaur. She is presently working as Senior Town Planner for two urban development authorities of Punjab, namely GLADA and PDA, that is Ludhiana and Patiala, respectively. So she has done her MTech from GNDU Amritsar. She has long professional experience as has worked as manager planning in Haryana Industrial Development Corporation and then joining as assistant town planner with the Town and Country Planning Department of Punjab. She has graduated to district and then to present senior level. Now, ma'am will be delving upon role of planning mechanism and regularization process for sustainable urbanization. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving me opportunity to present a presentation. And my topic is role of planning mechanism and regularization process for sustainable urbanization. I think it is legible and audible. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. The contents of the presentation will include urbanization, mechanism for planned urbanization, regularization drive to monitor and control haphazard urban development. So, urbanization is a phenomena of expansion of cities spatially as well as numerically. The cities are expanding spatially in planned manner and also in the form of urban sprawl. And these are also increasing numerically because villages are expanding to form various statutory towns and notified area committees. For example, in year 2001, statutory towns were 5,161, which have increased to 7,931 in year 2011. Similarly, metropolitan cities are also increasing day by day, and the number has increased to 53 in the year 2011 from 35 in the year 2001. The number of towns have also increased because of coming up of some new towns. For example, Chandigarh is a planned town, Navi Mumbai is a satellite town, and Amravati is the recent example of capital city of Andhra Pradesh. So, what are the factors responsible for urbanization? We all know that persons are attracted toward urban centers because there are a lot of employment opportunities as these towns are acting as industrial towns, trade centers, port towns, administrative towns, temple towns, pilgrimage centers, which have having high capacity to employment. Further, people are also moving to urban cities because of social factors and modernization of lifestyle. as the cities cater better living and working environment, better health, education, and other infrastructure services and facilities. So, what are the consequences of urbanization? Urbanization leads to both strength as well as challenges. Strength and opportunities of the towns are skilled labor, manpower, flourishing economy, and better living standards. And the challenges is overcrowding of the cities, slums, shelterlessness, pollution, shortage of essential services. Since urbanization is an organic process which is taking place in its own course and time due to unexpected migration phenomena and because of various push and pull factors. Push factors means villages are uh, getting out migration, and pull is that cities are attracting the in migration. But this has resulted into unplanned and unauthorized development, which was theoretically meant to be in a planned way, hence resulting into urban sprawl, which is the major challenge before urban as well as regional planners. Since urbanization is also taking place because of market forces, so it is having mixed development. It is not like that organizations and government are not making any efforts to cater planned development, but there is a gap between demand and supply. So the actually achieved quality of life, and there is a gap between the kind of desired quality of life, which can be addressed by right policies and right decisions at right time, and also by encouraging public participation. Furthermore, dynamism of concepts and practices is required. Dynamism can be Dynamism is required while addressing the issue of social requirements, economic demands, changing technology, climatic issues, health and disaster management. And for example, we are having pandemic era, so we need to study the norms of the planning in this scenario. For example, like earlier we had lot of transportation mechanism, but these days due to internet and online era, the space norms are changing, and we need to go into study of these parameters. Next is planning mechanism as a tool to achieve sustainable urbanization development goals. It can be divided into two parts. One is urban planning mechanism, another is regional planning mechanism. And these can't work in isolation, these are interlinked as well. In urban planning mechanism, the micro and macro level planning, including preparation of master plans, zonal plans, and sector plans, is covered. And in regional planning mechanism, regional plans are prepared, which can be given in counter magnet areas and satellite towns as a solution. Then I focus on preparation of master plan in Punjab. What is urban planning mechanism in Punjab? Like Gill said that there is lack of mechanism in Punjab, but I would say that planning department is working a lot for preparation of master plan since inception of town planning department. But it is in the year the Punjab Regional and Town Planning and Development Act came in the year 1995, which has been amended in the year 2006. The preparation of master plan includes 4 stages. First is declaration of local planning area, then designation of planning agency, then preparation of present land use map, and then approval of the master plans. The include broad indication of the manner in which the land in area should be used, then allocation of area of zones of different land use in a compatible manner, indication and definition and provision of existing and proposed highways. So we propose network plans, indication of areas covered under heritage sites, regulations to regulate within each zone what will be the coverage, and what will be the number of stories, size, etc. These are covered in the last chapter of the master plan. The Act also states the role of development, use of planning data when plan is in operation. That enforcement also takes place as per the provisions of the Act and as per the provisions of master plan. This is the flowchart indicating the stages of master plan, which I have already explained. First, declaration of planning area as a and designation of planning agency. The local planning area is notified under Section 56(1) of Punjab Regional and Town Planning Act, and designation of planning agency by the board under Section 57, and which is Chief Town Planner Punjab. Then we prepare land use maps. Land use maps are prepared, and then we prepare master plan. Then I come to master plan of Patiala. The municipal corporation area is 50 square kilometer, and since the outgrowth had taken place, so there was need to plan the entire influence area. So local planning area was declared in 2008, which covered 155 villages along Patiala and urban. The population from year 1981 from 3.3 lakh to 4.8 lakh in 2001. Keeping this the projections were made, and the proposed population is 9.65 lakh total, and around 8 lakh. Not only based on field survey, these were based upon cartographic data and data. These satellite images were from Ludhiana and Punjabi Ludhiana and covered along with the revenue maps, overlaid the revenue maps, and then we had the field service as well. So this is the existing land use map of Patiala. We shows the development in all directions of the along the.
Mandeep, can I interrupt you in between just for a second?
Yes,
I apologize. Yeah, I apologize for the interruption, but I think Professor Anisur Rahman has a commitment at 1, and he's getting delayed for that. So thank you, Professor Rahman. I think it's absolutely a pleasure and delight to hear you once again, and all of us, our audience, have been enlightened by your vision. Thank you so much for
Thank you
us.
so much. Thank you, Dr. Bharti, for having given this wonderful chance to share my rambling thoughts, and I became the part of your great event. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for disruption indeed. So I had the program, otherwise I would have continued. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, Miss Mandeep, please continue. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
and
so
I
much.
think we also have our speaker from US. He has just joined us. So please, Miss Mandeep, aap continue kijiye, and then our speaker from US will speak. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I was explaining that existing land use plan was studied based on the trend of development and the kind of growth and the growth potential of the city. We envisaged the proposed land use map, and the focus was to give compact and compatible development. So these two C's are important. One is compact planning, another is compatible planning. Compact in terms of that city should be catered to a certain limit and should not outgrow in any kind of way. So we have provided the ring roads around the city, in which the various land use proposals have been given, like industrial, residential, and network plans, so that these are in compatible to each other. For example, you can see this purple portion is industrial area along the national highway passing in the city, and there is a green buffer within the residential area and separating the residential area with this industrial zone. This is the proposed transport network plan, and yeah, so we have proposed ring roads, and if we prioritize the development of the town in phases, then in first phase, I think we should connect the
I think there is some connectivity issue with Miss Mandeep. I think she has been disconnected. Is that so? Okay, so in the meanwhile, till she joins back, welcome, Tony. We have been waiting for you for almost 2 hours now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely, we can.
I had some computer problems, and my computer decided not to cooperate in the last 2 hours. I've been trying to get it up. I was able to connect once or twice, but it's a pleasure being with you, and I've been watching for a few minutes. I'm going to turn on my presentation.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly introduce you also, Tony. Okay, yeah, I'll just introduce you also for our audience. Well, of course, since Miss Mandeep has just been disconnected, so we'll have Professor Tony. He has been able to join us after certain hiccups on his part. So, well, very quickly, connectivity issue, we all face that, but it's a pleasure to have you, Professor Tony. Well, Dr. Tony Pereira, he is PhD and, of course, a Fulbright scholar and professor and scientist researcher and also an author. And he has founded Institute of Sustainable Engineering and has been working on the issues of applied science, eco-sustainability for many years, and also received MDG award. And welcome, Professor Tony. It's a pleasure to have you here. Yeah, please. Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure being here. Thank you also for waiting so patiently. I missed the beginning of the conference. In our time, we have an extraordinary opportunity to change direction from where we have been to where we are going. And it's our choice. We can make that choice. It will take some vision. It will take vision. It will take determination. It will take education. And will take some effort, like everything else. But that effort is an effort that it must be worthwhile. If we are going to remain here on the planet, we have to make a hard choice. It really doesn't have to be hard, and we'll go through that. But we have to make a choice. Where do we want to go? Do we want to continue to pollute our air, our water, our soil, our food, the food that we eat? Or do we want to clean up the air, clean up the water, the plants, the animals, the soil, and the food that we eat? Because without the soil, we cannot be. Without the air, we cannot be. Without the water, we cannot be. So we must really think very hard about this. We don't make nature. Nature makes us. And it will never be another way. So we need to make that choice. And in order to make that decision, we're going to pick up just eight technologies. One is passive solar. Another one is solar photovoltaic. Another one is catching the water from the rain, on which India has a tradition of thousands of years that is unbeknownst to the West, to Western civilization. We'll pick solar cooking. Yes, we can cook with the sun. We don't need gas or electricity. Directly with energy from the sun, with the heat from the sun. And also with the same thermal energy from the sun, we can heat the water for the home, for washing the hands, for washing the clothes, for washing the body, for washing the dishes. And we can filter that water into a mini marsh system that can be placed into a garden or into an organic farm or into plants and animals. And we pick another technology, which is dry compost toilets without using water. 40% of the water that comes into the home, it's used to flush the toilet. And we'll build soil. We'll build an organic garden because in the soil, that's where everything is. So let's get started. The energy that we get, it's energy from the sun. All the energy that's on the planet, it's energy that has been stored for a very, very long time in one form or another. And here we are going to look at the energy that has been stored in the form of hydrocarbons by the photosynthesis of plants. And in a process that took about 700 million years, the coal, the natural gas, and the oil that has been stored, we are converting that in just a few hundred years into energy that we use to do all kinds of things. And that energy does not disappear. That energy is stored again. It goes back into the planet, in something that in science we call entropy. And what we need to do, instead of going into that cycle of stored energy into entropy, we need to go to a cycle, a steady state cycle that comes directly from the sun. We use into energy, and we still will be generating entropy. But what we need to do is to reduce the amount of entropy that we are generating, because at the moment, the amount of entropy that we use, it's to such an extent that the planet cannot manage that much entropy without being overwhelmed. In other words, we burn coal or gas or oil, it generates CO2, it goes into the atmosphere, it warms up, it traps energy from the sun, it warms up the energy, melts the polar caps, increases the acidity of the oceans, reduces the bioavailability of nutrients in the ocean, changes the biodiversity on the land, dries up the land, increases desertification, and on and on and on and on. All of those are the consequences of entropy, of an excess entropy that the planet cannot regenerate, cannot manage. And it has to be reduced. We have to reduce that. Otherwise, that entropy will finish us off. There is no doubt about it. So, and if we put residential and commercial buildings together, that's about 40% of the global energy consumption. And another one third is going into industrial um, activities like making the computers that we are using right now, making the internet that we're using right now, building our cars, fabricating our cars, our refrigerators, washing machines, everything else, houses, homes, building those things, concrete, cement, asphalt for the roads, everything else that we use. And 20%, 27%, almost another third of that energy goes directly into the transportation sector to move goods from place to place. So in this merry-go-round of energy and sun and materials and everything, the beautiful city that we see here in the middle, it's Los Angeles in a very nice day, in a very clear day. That happens maybe once in 10 years. Usually it's smoggy, air polluted. In the background, that's the San Bernardino Mountains, about 2 hours car drive from the city, about 10,000 feet, which is about 2,000 meters up. A little bit snow here and there, but not much. So the cities, we need food on the left side, we need water, we need air, we need energy, we need materials. And all of those come from the nice blue and green circle rotating at the bottom. And once we use all of those things in the city, food, water, and air, energy, materials, then we throw them, and we need those to build these buildings, to the concrete, the cement, the timber, the wood, the food that we need while we're there. At the end, once we're done with that, we put all of that waste and all of that pollution, that is entropy, we put it back into the planet, and the planet has to deal with it. That is, we need water. We go wash our hands, use a little bit soap. The water dirties up. It goes into the planet, and the planet needs to clean it up. So a little bit later, we can use it again. That's entropy. The thing is that we are generating so much entropy that the planet is overwhelmed. And the same goes with the air, and the same goes with the soil. We're losing soil at an alarming rate. So the city in itself does not produce anything. Everything needs to come from outside. So the footprint of the city, it far exceeds the area, the geographic area that the city is built in, to the point that if everyone on the planet would live, use, consume, and waste at the same rate as a city as Los Angeles or New York or London or Paris or Delhi, any of those cities, then we would need not one planet, not two, not three, but about 6 or 7 or 8 planets, and consume them all and fill them up with entropy to the point that those 7 planets would not know what to do with it. So what we're proposing here is that with those 8 technologies, reduce the amount of entropy that we are using, that we are generating by our consumption and waste, to levels that are that the planet, our Earth, can sustain, that can manage. This is the line of entropy, the red line. It's the line of consumption and waste. And this comes from a study from the University of British Columbia, from William Rees and Walker Nagel. And they were both graduate students there at one time. And they asked this question, very, very simple, brilliant question. How much does it take for me, how much does it take for me, for myself, as a person, as a human being? How much does the earth do I need to use in terms of acres, in terms of land? So if I was going to generate all my food, all my fuel, all my clothing, all my shoes, all my cars, all my metals, all my timber, all the woods, all the concrete to build my home from land, how much in terms of materials and energy, in terms of mass and energy, how much would that take? And the answer was that we have about, per person on the planet, of land that can be used, we have about 2 hectares. And the green line in the middle is about that distribution. That's the amount that is available per capita on the planet. It's stable. It's a straight line. It doesn't increase. It increases a little bit. We gain some land. We lose some more land because of desertification. But over the years, stays pretty much horizontal. The red light, we start measuring that in the 60s. And it went up and it went up, it went up in the 70s, crossed the green light, which is the biocapacity of the planet. And it continued. It didn't stop there. It just continued up. So about the year 2000, it went up to 120%. And right now, in the year 2020, is already up there somewhere in the over the graphic at about 1.7. That means humanity, on average, globally, it's already using, on average, for you, for me, for every man, child, and woman on the planet, in all the countries, it's using 1.7 planets. That is almost 2 planets of the 1 planet that we have. How is that possible? Well, it's like going to the bank and having $200 in there. Having $100 in the bank and taking out 200. So we go into deficit. And that's what we're doing there. We're doing now. We are over-exploiting the biocapacity of the planet to amounts that the planet cannot support. So it's going to collapse. Like a bank account would collapse, the planet is going to collapse. So this is the distribution over the planets and over the countries on average. And on the left side, we see the countries that consume more, like the USA, and then the European countries. And India is right here to the right side, somewhere in there, is 3/4 to the right, at about 0.5, 0.6 planets. The black line is 1 planet. The red line is, at this time that I made this graphic, that was about 1.2. But right now it's much, much higher. It's almost twice around the years, and 1.7. It's reaching 2 times what the red line above the black line. And the black line is the sustainable level. So these are the human activities. It came a little bit, doesn't look a little bit out of place. So let's go to the next slide. So how are we doing with those technologies? Passive solar design. It's a series of methods that, by proper orientation, by proper design, by proper thermal methods of keeping the home, will keep the home not too hot in the summer, not too cold in the winter. So the thermal balance of buildings can be achieved. And those methods are fairly simple. They're not very complicated. There are now computer programs that buildings can be analyzed for thermal stability and thermal design. Then we can use non-toxic materials for the construction of home using time-tested uh, methods that have used low energy, that have low embodied energy, like adobe, straw bale, concrete to very small and limited amounts, because concrete is very energy intensive, generates a lot of entropy. Wood, stone, brick, bamboo, insulation with natural materials like cotton and other vegetable materials. No fiberglass. Fiberglass extremely toxic. Is a carcinogen. It's a known carcinogen. It's a crystal, man-made crystal, glass crystal that does not exist in nature. That breaks down. It doesn't break down. It doesn't biodegrade. It breaks down in very, 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 very small crystals that are in the 1 or 2 micron range that go into the air and stay in the air. Today, we can go to the North Pole or to the South Pole, take air samples in there, take them to the lab, and we will find fiberglass in the air. And it is a carcinogen because it lodges itself in the lungs and doesn't come out. No PVC. PVC, polyvinyl contains the C is for chlorine. And because chlorine is such a reagent, it produces chemicals that are extremely toxic, and one of them is dioxin. Then we can use natural paints, with low volatile organic compounds, paints and plasters, and those are we stay inside the homes 8 hours to sleep, another 3 or 4 hours to eat and sit down and read something or watch some news or read a paper or whatnot. We spend 3/4 of our life inside in places that have toxics, and we're breathing those constantly. The same from carpets, notorious flooring and furniture. Carpets and furniture have chemicals, one of them formaldehyde, another carcinogen, and there are many, many more. And we use organic fibers, cotton, hemp, and shades, and jute, and others in shades, and carpets instead, wood. Solar energy, we can design a system. This is for a fairly large home, more than 4 or 5 people. And solar energy, we don't design solar energy. We start by reducing the amount of energy that we're going to do and the reason that we're going to use, that we're going to need by efficient appliances, refrigerators, computers and machines that we use at home, whatever, lighting. Refrigerators is about 40%, 50% of energy used in the homes, the biggest load, because every dollar of energy that we save in consumption means a reduction in the solar system of 3 or 5 times, $3 or $5. So a solar system, instead of costing $30,000, it will cost $5,000, $10,000. Then wind can be used but it requires an estimation. It requires a study for at least 1 year. We have to get average data, not put the finger out in the window and say, oh, okay, today is windy, we're going to have wind energy. No, it's not like that. It might look like there is a lot of wind outside, but it's not sufficient to be worthwhile of collecting. And that has to come to an average a year of 12 meters per second minimum on average, not just 1 time or 2 times, on average over a period of 1 year. And actually, this model is a model that has been manufactured in India for about 500 US. And not the big farms, and again, not the big solar farms that take fields and take land. We can put all of these things on a rooftop. The same with a small turbine. We can put those things next to the home, not on top of a mountain to go destroy some mountain somewhere. Rainwater is a resource, not a waste, not a nuisance. It's a resource we need to capture. And India has a glorious in the north, the Kunds, the surfaces, the catchment surfaces, the pillars that indicate this is a collection area for rainwater with the letters in Sanskrit that say, do not bring your animals. Don't dirty this area because this is common ground. And this is a knowledge that's precious. And that can be collected in a home into a cistern. It's widely used in Australia. They do 50% of the population in Australia collects the water, and they look at us in the West because we don't do it in the USA. We don't do it in Europe, and say, you guys are you're fools. You're crazy. And the water that we use in the washing the clothes, in washing the body, washing the hands, for cooking, for washing dishes, that water does not need to go into the sewer. The key to that, it's not to use chlorine, again, because chlorine is an incredibly reactive element. It's in the halogen group. It has 7 electrons in the outer side, and for that it becomes incredibly reactive. And naturally, with carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen in water, that are always present in there, especially after washing something. The things that come from the washing, from the clothing, cotton or skin from the hands and from the body. It reacts with those and generates naturally. You don't need to warm it up. You don't need to add anything, other acids or other reagents. It creates a class of chemicals that are called trihalometanes, and 200 of them are naturally carcinogen, including another one, which is dioxin, which is incredibly toxic. So that's the key, and can be placed on a mini gray marsh like this. The tanks are not full of water. They are full of gravel. They are just shown transparent in order to be able to see how this works. The water comes into the first tank here on the left side. It does not rise before it rises to the level of the soil. It exits to the second tank. Before it rises to the surface, it exits to the third and on to the last one. And the reason that it stays below the surface is that it doesn't allow the mosquitoes and other vectors that can spread disease to grow on the surface of the soil. So the things that small particles after washing, after food or vegetables that are transported with the water are captured by the roots of these plants, and those can be cattails or bulrushes. They are available pretty much everywhere and around the planet and other places in the world. Other plants that are also suitable, and the roots of the plants filter those particles with the photosynthetic action of the sun. Builds the plants can feed themselves and grow. Then they can be cut and they can become compost to build the soil. And we're going to see that in just a while, in just a little while. So we are also biodigesters. We eat plants and we biodigest those, and they also can be composted. The 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 key aspect of that is a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 30 to 1. So our human waste is very rich in nitrogen, and we add a little bit of carbon in the form of dried leaves or plant residue that is dried up, or sawdust, and that begins a bacterial aerobic, in the presence of oxygen, reaction that recycles those nutrients, breaks down the nutrients, and makes them bioavailable to the roots of plants. And this is an area of science that only in the last 30 years, 40 years, started to be studied. And it is amazing what we don't know. Things like rhizophagy, like how the nutrients go in the microbacteria that exist around the roots of plants, enter the roots of plants, actually enter and go into a cycle, an oxidative cycle in there, lose nutrients. The micronutrients then exit the roots of plants by the hairs of the roots, go back into the soil, heat up and start eating up again, start charging themselves again, go inside of the roots of plants again. And there is a micronutrient cycle that feeds the plant, that feeds us, and then we need to reestablish that nutrient cycle again. And we're not doing that. We are using chemical fertilizers, killing those microbacteria, killing the mycelium, killing the rhizoma, that the symbiotic action on the roots of plants. And that's committing suicide. So 50 years ago, because we didn't have chemical fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, all of those things that all come from oil. 50 years ago, it took 1 calorie, 1 unit of energy to produce 10 calories of food. Yes, we can measure how many the energy in food. It's done with a calorimeter. And now, 50 years later, after World War II, it takes 10 calories of fossil fuels to produce 1 calorie of food. The reverse is true. And now we're using a little bit more than 17%. We are already using about 20% of all the energy on the planet. It's used by agriculture. Where? Well, to make those pesticides and fungicides and synthetic chemicals and synthetic fertilizers that are used in agriculture in a cycle that does not need to be that way. And the results that we're losing topsoil, 1-inch topsoil, every 15 to 20 years worldwide. And it takes 500 to 1,000 years to generate that same 1-inch of topsoil naturally by the decay of leaves and organic plant material into the soil. So we put all of those technologies together, and we have number one, we build with a thermally stable, natural, non-toxic material that's available around the planet pretty much everywhere. Number one, that the house cools and vents and ventilates itself with natural methods. Then we put some solar panels on the planet, not in the solar plant, not in a corporation somewhere that we don't have control. We don't know what they're doing. They don't have our interest. They only have their own interests in mind. Then we put number 5, which is to warm up the water on the roof. We can light the home with things that with very easy techniques. These are called solar tubes that allow the sun to come directly into the rooms of the home. We can build the solar cooker directly into the wall of the house, either into the southern wall. if you are on the southern hemisphere, it would be on the northern part of the home. Number 7, a compost toilet. Number 3, rainwater catchment to catch all the water that comes into the roof and use it for the home, for the garden. And then we drink the water, we use the water, it goes into the gray water system. No, it does not go into the toilet. It goes directly into the gray water system, goes into the organic garden. The food grows into the organic garden. The plant material builds up in here, goes into the garden, builds up the soil. The food comes into the home. We eat the food, goes into the compost toilet, goes in composting there, goes into the garden, and we get more water, we get more food, goes into the house, and goes back in this merry-go-round. And this is the cycle of life. This is the cycle of nutrients. This is what keeps us alive, and we need to understand that. This is a low entropy cycle that does not require fossil fuels, does not require coal, does not require natural gas. Well, a little bit in here and there to build number 5 and number 2, but there is no motors, there is no pumps. There is almost no electricity needed to power any of these things. So there it is. And I'll leave you with open to questions. I'll leave you some references in here. Oh, yeah. At the bottom, you can see either you go to to the website that Bharti knows where it is, can give you those, or pick up this paper here at the bottom, go to Science Digest, or go to the Facebook website, and you can download it from there. And all of these are explained in there a little bit more in detail with engineering and design specifications that you should observe, and about 150 or so references in there. So, and then you're all set. And it's a pleasure being in here. It's a pleasure talking about these things. We need to change to a very, very low entropy. If we keep accumulating entropy on the planet at the rate that we're doing right now, there is nothing, absolutely nothing that will be able to stop it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony, for that very comprehensive and passionate presentation. And I think we initially planned today's program as a webinar, but with 4 wonderful speakers that we have today, it has turned into a conference. So I think wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Tony. I'll quickly take 3 questions we have for you, Tony. One is from Rohan Bhaskar. He asks, how feasible is it to electrify everything by 2050? Building in cold climate regions like the upper Midwest of the US would require massive build out of the renewables grids to meet peak requirements. So basically, he wants to ask about like how feasible is it to reach our targets by 2050, especially in cold climate.
Right. It may come as a surprise to many that solar PV, in this example in here, there are 2 types of energy from the sun. Number 2 is solar photovoltaic. And number 5 is it's not solar photovoltaic. It's also energy from the sun, but it's the thermal energy from the sun. It's the same energy that we feel when we go on the window outside and put our hand outside in the window and put it in the sunlight, and we feel it warming up. That's the thermal energy of the sun. So that number 5 is used to warm up water. It also can be used to warm up the homes. You can warm the water, put a radiator inside the home, put a small fan, and distribute it through the house. If the house is well built with thermal insulation, then it uses a fraction of the energy that in cold climates and normally homes in there use, because we build we build homes, we put some insulation there, but we don't design them really well. We don't use passive solar techniques in order to use the heating and the cooling from the sun during the summer months. So during the winter months, maximize it during the winter, minimize it during the summer. So if we do all of that in a program, and it's for the north, it may come as a surprise that solar energy, like for number two, photovoltaic, it's used all the way to Alaska. It's even used in Antarctica during the short period of sun that they have in there, a few months during the summer. It's used in as far south as the poles. In Vermont, which is in the north, in Canada, in Alaska, there are solar homes. Of course, they cannot use solar energy the whole year round, but they can use solar energy for 6 months, and then the rest of the year they minimize the use of fossil fuels, whatever, right now. And we could, using other methods like using natural wood, we could convert that into energy, into small power plants, in order to supply the needs for electrical energy. But in the north, up to 51 latitude, 50 latitude, those are the latitudes of England. Those are the latitudes of Ireland. Those are the latitudes of Scotland. And there are, and the same, they can use photovoltaics. So even in cold climates, that can be used. States like Vermont, they are looking at becoming fully renewable energy, sustainable, with in 2030, or maybe even earlier than that.
The second question is from Kamakshi. She wants to know what is the impact of a consumer electronic product depending on various design concepts with different materials, modules, and a range of usage scenarios in the era of biocapacity of machines.
And does he have a specific
Basically, I think,
area?
basically she just wants to know that when we talk about different modules or different concepts, or building different consumer electronic products with different electronic designs. So what
Yeah.
basically is the biocapacity, in special reference to biocapacity of the machines? That is, I think, she wants to know.
And what kind of electronics? There are computers, iPhones.
I think she's just generalizing. She's generalizing
Generalizing.
it. Yeah.
Generalizing. The electronics, there's so many areas in electronics. In solar, in what we're talking in here, in solar energy, we could solarize the entire planet in record time. We really could do it with proper design, and to think about that is, again, is the key is to reduce first, go into efficiency and reduce the amount of power, of electricity that we are consuming. For electronics in general, the amount of materials that we are using are excessive by any measure, and we are getting into cycles of consumption that obsolescence is designed in computers, in refrigerators, in washing machines, in order to keep the consumption going. And there's no need for that. We can build appliances, washing machines, refrigerators, computers that last a very, very, very long time, and cut the obsolescence of those in order to keep the corporations going, and in order to keep the factories going, in order to keep the consumption going, and of course will generate entropy and will generate waste, and we're being inundated with all of that waste. So the question is very, very, very critical, and it's in order to do that, we have to think differently.
And the final question that we have, Tony, is something that many of our participants are asking, that with the change of governance in United States, can we also expect some change in the US commitments towards climate change?
Yes, well, we have been through a nightmare in the last 4 years, and with a horror show, and thankfully it's over. So, will we see great changes? It's I must. It's very difficult to predict because the past for judging from past experiences in the life of the persons that have been the Americans that have been elected to office, they are very controversial. So we will see things like some improvements in legislation, like the abuses done by the previous administration in the last 4 years, the abuse, the scandals, the lies, the corruption. We will see a new change. We'll see a change of direction. In that, I'm positive that we'll see. In terms of a new Green Deal, we still have a lot of work to do because there is no concrete decision, or no commitment, no sincere commitment of any of these people in the administration that we can start seeing those changes. We will need to make a lot of pressure, in other words, and that's a lot of work for us, for citizens. We'll have to make a lot of pressure. Most of them, they are not very well educated, if at all, in these aspects. They have never faced this, so it depends on us to educate them and to push for changes. But the United States uses an excessive amount of materials and energy, and they don't come from the United States. They come from all over the planet. They come from all the countries around the planet in order to support our lifestyle, and the same for Europe. 10% of the population on the planet. That's we are getting very close to 8 billion. 10% of that population, about 800 million to 800 to 1 billion, uses 80% of the resources of the planet: air, water, food, timber, plants, animals, fish, you name it, cars, planes, airports, asphalt, roads, cities. It's used by 10%, 80% of that use, 80% of that consumption, 80% of that entropy, because mass and energy don't disappear. We cannot make disappear waste. It's not possible. The waste is always here, from electronics or whatever it is. It ends up somewhere. Plastic doesn't disappear. It doesn't even biodegrade. It breaks down in very small particles. And now we are eating plastic in the food. It's already in the food cycle. So 10% of that population is in the USA and in Europe, using 80% of the resources for the planet. So the overpopulation discussion is wrong, because we have 90% of the remaining population using 20% of the resources of the planet. That's a horrible balance. It's out of balance. So we need to balance them more and reduce more in the industrial, so-called industrialized countries, reduce the consumption to levels that are manageable, that can be managed. Otherwise, it's we are in the we hit the wall and not we don't have much of a chance really.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tony, for that very engrossing presentation and also highlighting the very critical issue of equitable distribution of resources. Well, moving from sustainable to eco-sustainable development and also highlighting that how we are straining Earth's carrying capacity, and it's time to move and build sustainable housing, reduce our carbon footprint, solar, wind energy, and rainwater catchment, and also waste recycle, looking it as a resource rather. Treating waste as a waste. So thank you, Dr. Tony, for that very engrossing presentation. And as we have already overshot that time, so I quickly request Ms. Mandeep to please rejoin and continue with her presentation. Yeah, please.
A pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank
you. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tony. Thank you so much. Yeah, please. Thank you.
So I was discussing urban planning mechanism in Punjab and focusing on preparation of master plans and their role. And my case study I have taken is proposed master plan of Patiala. As I have already discussed that existing land use plan was prepared after extensive studies, that is with the help of satellite data, then with the help of revenue data, and also with the field upgradation maps. So we have come to preparation of this existing land use map, which shows that organic growth of the town had taken place along the major routes. So we have prepared proposed land use map, keeping the two main criteria, that is compact development and compatible development. Compact in the form of we have given ring road and the development has been envisaged around the within this urbanizable area limit. And keeping compatibility into consideration, the industrial land use zone has been segregated from the town and a green buffer has been provided between residential area and industrial zone. Further, we have focused on network plan because mobility plan is the main criteria for development of any town. We have proposed a ring road around the city so that unnecessary regional traffic, which is not required in urban areas, can safely pass on these regional bypasses. So ring road has been proposed around the city. Like this is ring road, this is Rajpura road, Sarand road, this is Sangrur road, and we have proposed all around a ring road around the town. This bypass is existing bypass, but since expansion has taken place beyond this, so we have given the ring road up to the outgrowth taking into the consideration. Further, the development ring road can take place in phases based upon the priority. Since industrial area needs growth in first phase, so in first phase, Rajpura road and Sarand road connectivity can be covered. In second phase, the ring road between Southern Bypass and Rajpura road can be covered because lot of residential expansion has already taken place in this direction. This is Punjabi University, this is Bahadurgarh, and these are planned urban states as well, which are outside the MC limit. So this a lot of colonies are also coming up in this zone. So we can give this ring road in the second phase as and when feasible. In third phase, this connectivity can be given because the kind of expansion has taken place is at very low pace. This is the cantonment area, so this can be taken place in the last phase. Further, the private partnership is very important to achieve the sustainable urbanization, and PUDA has acted as a licensing authority under Punjab Apartment and Property Regulation Act to achieve the goals of the master plan. The PAPRA provides the checking and controlling and regulating of the unauthorized development also. Further, government has made efforts to act as a promoter as well, individually as well as in participation of private developers. For example, various new kind of schemes have been launched. One is landowners tie up with the authority 80-20 scheme, in which the landowners can tie up with the authority, and 80% of the benefit will be given to the private and 20% will be given to the government, and the whole land will be owned by the landowner, and government has only promoter's role. In land pooling scheme also has been launched. Sorry. Then landowners can become land partners also. For example, at the backside of the urban estate Punjabi University, a urban estate phase 4 has been launched. Further, optimum utilization of vacant government land scheme has also been launched by the government, as there are various vacant government lands lying vacant, and they have very potential locations which can be exploited in the terms of commercial development. Then, after discussing urban planning tool, I come to regional planning mechanism as a tool to achieve sustainable development goal, which is very much linked with the urban planning mechanism. So it is at a larger scale to remove regional imbalances and for the balanced growth of the urban towns, metropolitan cities, and other settlements. Regional planning mechanism is a tool to promote planned urbanization in these segments. To decongest the mother city, various satellite towns and counter-magnet areas are proposed, keeping their interdependence into consideration in terms of regional linkages, proximity, employment and trade potential, and interrelation of the facilities or services. National Capital Regional Plan 2001 had proposed Patiala as one of the first counter magnet towns. So these were identified so that these could play the role of interceptors of migratory flows into NCR and provide a pull to migrants from less developed adjoining areas. NCRP is providing financial assistance to participating state governments, and Patiala Development Authority is taking up a rejuvenation of Choti Nadi and Badi Nadi as one of such projects under this scheme. NCRPB has further decided that these counter-magnet areas will not limit to urban areas only and could be developed and proposed in form of corridors. Hence, Punjab government had sent a proposal for inclusion of Patiala-Rajpura corridor, which is a connection between Patiala and Ambala city. So this proposal was accepted by NCRPB and has been notified by the Punjab government as well. The inclusion of Rajpura will have a great development potential to capture population movement from this direction towards NCR, as it is at a more advantageous regional location as compared to Patiala, because it is the first railway junction of Punjab on Delhi-Amritsar railway line, diverting into the two directions. One is Amritsar Jammu and another is Bathinda Rajasthan. So this is also regarded as a gateway of Punjab. Inclusion of this Rajpura town as counter magnet area will also boost the industrial growth of this region. Further, dedicated freight corridor has also been proposed in this region, which will be crossing Rajpura, passing through Haryana, UP, terminating in Sonnagar in Bihar. So this will also act as a lifeline of the region. The other project is Amritsar Delhi Kolkata Industrial Corridor, which aims at expansion of infrastructure and industrial clusters in Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Punjab government has identified 1,000 acres of land for global manufacturing and knowledge park in Rajpura, which is being taken up shortly. Although there are various planned efforts being made by the Department of Town and Country Planning as well as the development authorities and various municipal bodies, but because of lack of enforcement of these master plans, because there was lack of scarcity of land, finances, many other problems like awareness and lack of public response for achieving the planned development in the towns, the Punjab government has also come up with regularization drive to control and monitor the haphazard development. So, by imposing some penalties and compounding fees, this can solve their problem of by providing services through funds generated by these policies. Punjab government has also come up with the compounding policy for unauthorized standalone structures. So this will also help in the same manner without compromising the accessibility, parking, setbacks, and other utility requirements and imposing some charges. The compounding policy has been framed to give this kind of development also. Hence, these are the steps being undertaken to attain sustainable urbanization in planned manner at urban as well as regional level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mandeep, for a very interesting presentation. And again, you highlighted about Punjab and how many steps have been taken, and also in terms of connecting different cities in order to ensure that we have a better urban structure, which is sustainable in nature. Well, we have two questions for you, and both are related, so I'll quickly read them together. One is from Sonam, and other one is from Suharsh. They're asking that is it possible to plan with informality in terms of slum prevention and upgrading in South Asian countries? So basically, they just want to know, because these slums, they put a lot of pressure in terms of in the cities in terms of resources and otherwise. So although we have reduced poverty to a large extent in the urban areas, but still these slum settlement, they continue to grow. So what could be the best sustainable solution in order to deal with this problem?
Solution can be given in the form of affordable housing policies, which are already already have been launched by the government at various all other states. Also, Punjab government has launched it, so it can be adopted in other countries as well. So this can minimize the problem of slums development in other regions as well. ऑडिबल नहीं है.
Yeah, thank you, Mandeep, for that very interesting presentation and also an answer, I think, which sums up everything. That it's time that we move on towards sustainable development, and SDG 11 especially plays a very critical role in which we need to have and we need to involve all the stakeholders, as Dr. Gill also mentioned, the government, the private sector, and also the civil society, which includes professors, students, doctors, everyone, engineers. We all need to come together in order to ensure that we reach SDG 11 as we have planned by 2030. And I think India is moving a big way in that direction. We have already discussed during the course of our conference. Now I'll call it a conference rather than a webinar, that how we are taking a lot of good steps in terms of solar energy and also electric transportation and many other initiatives, and also other countries like Professor Tony, he shared about US, and also although there's some lacunas in different countries, but I think it's time that we all come together and ensure that we reach SDG 11. So I think now I request Dr. Ravneet to say a few words towards the end as a vote of thanks. Yeah.
Actually, vote of thanks will be presented by our Reverend Head. So I'm just
Okay.
introducing. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mandeep, for throwing light on the governmental town planning processes. And now just coming to the end. So I would like to introduce my head of the department, Dr. Anita Gill. She is Professor of Economics and presently head of the Department of Distance Education, and also leading a very prestigious post as Dean Social Sciences of Punjabi University, Patiala. So ma'am will propose vote of thanks on behalf of all the participants. Kindly, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravneet. I must say it was really a pleasure to listen to such learned speakers on a very important and very current topic, which I think needs attention on SDG 11. And before I thank all the speakers, I must congratulate the organizers, Dr. Bharti and Dr. Ravneet, for putting up such a good, I'll also call it a conference now, for putting up such a good conference and with speakers who have not only been part of the policy making and all, but also learned speakers who have been academicians and who have practical training and have been giving practical training towards this. So I'm very thankful to Dr. Anisur Rahman, Dr. Tony Pereira, Dr. H.S. Gill, Ma'am Mandeep Kaur for their very, very learned and informative uh, sharing of views with us. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. So now I think it's over to you, Bharti, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Dr. Anita Gill, for that vote of thanks, and it's pleasure to have you in our conference now, and look forward to having you in our future conferences also, and probably next time we'll ensure that many of you can join us. This time we had a different policy, so probably next time we can think about that to ensure that a lot of people join us in the meeting itself. Today, of course, we segregated like all the speakers in the meet and the audience in the YouTube, but we can always work that on in our next webinar if need be. But again, thank you to all our wonderful speakers, Professor Anisur Rahman, Professor Tony from USA. In spite of the connectivity problem, he's able to join us, and Dr. Gill and Ms. Mandeep for sharing their wonderful insights. And it has been a very, very fruitful session for our audience. And I'm sure all of them, they agree with that, that it's time to move on and work towards SDG 11 in terms of eco-sustainability. And also, I thank, of course, my colleagues from Punjabi University, Dr. Gill, of course, I can see, and of course, Dr. Ravneet, my co-convenor, and all the other colleagues who have joined us. I also thank my colleagues from my own university and different universities who have joined us via YouTube Live. And also to our wonderful audience who have the patience. Initially, we thought of winding it up in about 2 hours, but it's more than 3.5 hours. So have waited patiently because it was a very engrossing session. So I'm sure they all enjoyed it. And last but not the least, I think I'll also thank my students. They have been working with me throughout in order to ensure that this conference is very successful, especially in terms of ensuring that not many people join us. And especially two people I would definitely mention, two of my students, Chandrup and Nikhil. They have been working very, very hard. So with that, I thank once again our speaker, audience, and of course, everyone who has joined with us. And thank you, everyone, and look forward to meeting you again in the near future. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks for the welcome, and thank you all. Please, I left on the chat box. I left my Facebook, and you can find me there. And I hope to continue the contact with you so that we can work together. And any questions, anything that you need, please let me know, and I'll do everything that I can.
Thank
you all. Have a good night.
Thank
in
you,
about 12 hours.
Yeah, I think it's very late. I think it's supposed to be very, very late, right? It's 12.
It's getting to be one in the morning.
Oh my God!
But
it's very late in the state.
That's not a problem.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank
in
you.
about 12 hours, I left